young males, especially in Europe, are actually reporting quite a lot of mental health issues, especially when it comes to anxiety, social recognition, and bullying. When we look at the statistics or the data that's been put out there, it says that 77% of men polled have suffered with common mental health symptoms like anxiety, stress, or depression. Now that's a very high number. So today we're going to be talking to a family development specialist who is also a community support specialist as well, who's going to be telling us quite a little bit about why are we having these challenges when it comes to men's mental health, especially when it comes to the African men. We'll be right back shortly after this. Stay tuned. Prince Abel Ayodeji, how are you doing today?
I'm doing very well, sir. How are you doing?
All brilliant here, all brilliant.
That's good.
Disturbing news coming out, all over Europe and all that when it comes to mental health issues, especially when it comes to men. So, like I was just saying just a couple of seconds ago, from a report that we can see from the priorygroup.com, it's a blog that talks about mental health. It actually says that 77% of men polled have suffered with common mental health symptoms like anxiety, stress, or depression. Now, I know that I have gone through my fair share, when it comes to mental health issues and all that kind of stuff, when it comes to anxiety. I'm not sure if I was ever depressed. I can't tell you that because I don't know. Because there's a common challenge. There's a common challenge that we as African men have. And it's a cultural issue. We really don't like visiting doctors, whether for the physical health or the mental health. And then when it comes to the cultural side of it, when it comes to mental health particularly, people are always wary in the African community of actually going to see a mental health specialist of any kind, either a psychologist, a psychiatrist, and all of that. Or even, for instance, yourself, somebody that's a family support specialist. Let's first start with what precisely you do as a community development and family support specialist.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Firstly, what I do with families is I provide advocacy, parenting support, and of course, for a country like Ireland, I work majorly with migrant communities, which are the English-speaking African families. And of course, sometimes we have African parents and they have foster kids from other countries, and we have Irish parents with foster kids from Africa. So we provide support for them all. So this provision of support varies in cases where they have issues like domestic violence, child protection, and even depression, or finding it difficult to put in a ground of what do I call it? Putting measures in place for the children, setting ground rules in the houses and consequences as well. So we come in as a group of professionals working with the social workers that's already supporting the families. We come in with that intervention, putting culture as a perspective to support the family. But in the communities, we basically do a lot of community development and integration support work. So we provide workshops, information sessions, even when it comes to elections and all, we tend to sensitize our people and let them know their rights and their responsibility to the community to contribute and to be represented here in Ireland.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's brilliant. Now, for me, like I said earlier on, I've had some issues somewhere along the line. So I'll first tell my own, personal story. I've lived in Europe for 10 years. And when I first moved to Europe, it was the usual stuff where people tell you have to get a job, blah, 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 and all that. Now, I was lucky. I migrated legally and I had a soft landing. I had a very supportive wife, and all of that. So I didn't go through the struggles that a lot of people ordinarily would have gone through. But that doesn't mean that I didn't struggle. Because when you get to a new country, you will try to understand the system, how things work, and all that. I've been to England several times, but I've never been to Ireland. And Ireland, as much as you can say it's an extension of the UK, because there's so many similarities, it still has its own unique, environment, its own unique culture. So it was a case of being an entrepreneur, you had to get into the system. But for you to get into the system, you need to have finance. Now, I didn't have that at that point. So it was a case of I have to go and get a job. Now, I went through a very, very depressing period at that time. Why? Because I was writing my CV and I was sending out to so many job applications that were out there, trying to apply to get a job. Initially, it was a case of what I was qualified for. Then later, it became a case of just get me anything. And then you now start seeing like hundreds of responses, because the more jobs you apply to, the more they send you, a response. And sorry, at this time, you're not. And that's driving me off the cliff. I was like, what is this? What's going on?
I can imagine.
It took a lot for me to surmount those challenges. I got to a point where I said, okay, you know what? Let me go to school in Ireland. Go and do a refresher degree of some sort. And then, maybe that will help me get back into the system, seamlessly. That didn't happen. It was just the same thing. Of course, you start having negative thoughts, not just negative thoughts about the environment, but negative thoughts about yourself. Do you come across this type of, cases where people tell you that it's the environment that is leading to that, mental health challenges as a Black person, pulling up all sorts of ideas, racism, exclusion? Tell me.
It's actually a very typical case. And this is common because now we're talking about men.
Yeah.
It's very common amongst the African men coming into new communities and stuff like this. I've had several men attend my workshops, and when we talk about challenges they face in integrating into the labor market, they're able to get into the labor market and pick up factory work or sort of menial jobs, which is not as good as what they can do. So they were into the labor market, but they need to get fully integrated to get a job that suits their experience and their qualifications. So during our talks, you hear things like, well, I attended 10 interviews. I was not picked because I'm Black. And I goes, that doesn't sound like it. And when I hear stuff like that, I pull back a bit. I don't want to nail it in the head telling the person you're wrong or not, because you never can tell what they've actually really experienced. So I'll take a pause. I say, well, that's a very, very valid point there. Who else has a similar experience? Now, within the group, you see people turning against each other now. Some saying, actually, no, when I attend interviews and I do not do well, I ask for feedback. And from that feedback, I can go back and work on it. Then I know it's got nothing to do with my color or anything like that. I'm not saying there's nothing like that, but I think it's overrated. Because I remember when I lived in Finland, people will say, well, they didn't get picked because of the sound of their last name. And some will say because of the way they sound, their accent and all. So there's probably an element of that in there. But overall, that wouldn't be the primary reason why they're not getting integrated into the job. Or one other thing could be the experience. If you have practiced in a country like Kenya, Namibia, Nigeria, Ghana, you're a professional. Your CV says that. But for them, they need someone who understands the system. Not just because they think you're incompetent. One, your service users, if you're a doctor, your clients, they speak English in an Irish way. They speak with the Irish accent. And you're coming straight from Africa. You want to attend to an old Irish woman or old Irish man that sounds very Irish. One, you're going to have communication breakdown because you will not understand what they're saying. And the reality, the system here is a bit different from what that person is used to. So they will tell you, well, sorry, you're good, but we need you to have experience from this country. So in that case, you will feel like, well, I'm qualified, I have all the criterias, how come I'm not being selected? So there are things that are being expected of an employee which you might not have, which is not even written on black and white. So you're right, your experience there is very correct, but I'll say there are unseen factors that will be at play which you might not notice.
Okay, so when you say unseen factors, like, so give me 2 examples of unseen factors.
Okay, just like I said there, they know you're coming in from Africa. You've treated African patients as a doctor, but the common problem they have in Ireland might not be something you're familiar with. So the complexity of the built up of the community, you are strange to it. It's a new system. They know because you don't have experience, one, the accent, you will struggle to understand. And they will not write that, because if they write it, they will say, well, you're basically discriminating and selecting people. But they know it's a factor, they can't write it there. And some will say, and the other one could then be, well, how well do you know the area? Even as a social worker, you come into a community, like for instance, I live in County Monaghan, and you are qualified as a social worker from another country, even another EU country. Say you're from Latvia or Romania, and you move into Monaghan, you apply to be a community development worker. One, you don't even know the towns, you don't know the people, you don't know the villages, you don't know the problems, you don't know the history. You don't know them things. It will take a while for you to get yourself acquainted with those things. So these are invisible, silent factors. So they might pick someone local, and you will think, they only pick people within their mix. They only pick people they know, not knowing that those things are factored in their selection process also.
All right. So I'll tell you why I asked that question a second time. The reason why I asked that question the second time is in a lot of European countries, particularly, I'm not too sure. I haven't lived, in the US or in Canada or anywhere else. I've lived in Europe. There's something that I realized, which was a case of you don't have an integration process that is structured, that's put in place by any of the governments. A lot of the governments keep looking for immigration, people to come into the country and come and take up certain jobs, but they do not provide a means for these people to get integrated into the communities that they are coming in to live in and work in. So there's no document, there's no structured session like maybe classes and that kind of stuff. Yes, I know that it might come at a cost, but if you want people to come and work in your environment, I believe that the quickest way to get them into work is to get them integrated into that society, which is something that usually doesn't happen. Now, this leads to most of the frustrations that we're getting to see when it comes to the mental health. And these frustrations have led to domestic violence. Now, people always talk about domestic violence, and the first thing that comes to your mind is the man, beating up a woman or mentally abusing, his partner and all that. Most people do not talk about the reverse, which is the case of the woman being the aggressor in this case and the man being the victim. You've come across, you and I had a discussion, and you told me about a couple of issues, that you've encountered whilst you were working when it comes to the issue of domestic violence. How come nobody talks about the man being the victim?
It's actually a very good point, but permit me to go back a wee bit to where you spoke about integration.
Yes.
The integration plan. Well, I give it to Ireland. I'm now in Ireland. I'm part of the system. I've worked here. Not so long ago, about 2 to 3 years ago, the president of Ireland passed a law to all municipalities, to all counties, to come up with an integration strategic plan. Individual. So one county cannot use the one for the other county. They have to get a researcher and get everything done for their county. And they had a deadline to submit this because they identified the same problem you just spoke of, that there was a lack of a structured integration strategic plan for the people to come in, because there's been a massive influx of migrants coming from left, center, and right and all. But it was lacking that plan, that base to help them integrate. So what they done was, like for my county, my organization, at the time I was the chairperson of an organization called Lincoln Islands New Community. So they contacted us, and what they done was, because when they got a contract to carry out this research and to come up with this strategic plan for integration, they realized they have to get all the migrants in to speak to the Irish people, to speak to the companies and all. But they found it difficult to reach out to the migrants, because migrants were living in specific parts. They work together and they don't interact as much. So the researcher found, in clusters. So the consultant found it difficult to penetrate. Even when she approached them, the response wasn't great. She would invite them for workshops, no one would turn up. So she reached out to us, and we reach out to our respective communities. So with that, we're able to get people to attend these workshops, and then they could get people to tell what's missing, what could be done, what could be adjusted, and all. So with that, they came up with the strategic plan. And we have these plans, integration strategic plan, they're called. Each county has it in place now. So it's a bit more better structure they have in place now to help migrants integrate into the society. Of course, it could be better, but it's a good start. So I give that to Ireland. So going back to the effect of this lack of proper management of integration and its ripple effect on individuals, their mental health, and of course, it goes into their families as well, those that are married or those that are getting into marriages and having relationships. Because like we all know, we transfer frustrations as humans. If I have a bad day at work, I'm definitely bringing it home. My wife is going to get a feel of it. You understand? So I might be more quieter than usual, or I could be more talkative, commenting on every small thing, and she could tell, like, what's going on? What happened at work? So if people have been going through all sort of things in the community, they don't have the stand they used to have. What they pictured when they were coming to the country is different. They came in with so much enthusiasm, so much plan, so much aim, so much aspiration. So they came in, and and the whole story is different. They'll be like, come on, what's going on? So they will struggle, and not getting the right support will make them have an outpour of frustration into different avenues. And this cuts across genders. Of course, the way females will express their frustration might be slightly different from that of men. But women in a society like this, they're encouraged. There's so much avenue. They're encouraged to express themselves. There are different organizations providing services for women to express themselves, to get involved in everything they might do. But men, well, the supports are not as much, to be candid. So, men, we tend to be egoistic. We don't, if we're struggling slightly, we don't come out to talk. We have
is that ego, or is that more of a cultural thing? Because as African men, the way we are raised generally is to bottle things up. So you're going through a challenge, you don't discuss it, you don't share it, you try to manage it on your own. They say things like men don't cry, and all that kind of stuff. These are things that have defined the way the African man, has grown up, basically, from when they are kids to when they are teenagers to when they are full-blown adults. It's always been a case of manage your challenges yourself. So they don't get to communicate. We're not we're not very good communicators, generally speaking, that is, as African men. So would it not be more of a cultural issue?
It's a bit of both, but it's more cultural than just ego, because it's a massive cultural shift. When you come from a different orientation, different culture, a society with different cultural norms and beliefs, and you come to a different one where things you're used to are not the normal things here. So it takes a while to get used to the new system. And of course, because of the shift of orientation there, there's no time to start sitting down, say, I want to learn this, I want to learn that, how will things work here, which are the things that are being categorized and listed under the strategic plan for integration for the counties, because they've recognized this, that the difference in the culture, the pattern of the societies where people are coming from to this one they're coming into, there's a massive gap. So now they are training people, they're providing platform for people to come, engage, talk, speak, express yourself. One of this place we have here, facility we have, we call it Men's Shed. So Men's Shed is not only for migrants coming in, it's for men generally. Because there was a research they done, and they realized there's an increase in suicide amongst men. The suicide rate was higher amongst men.
Yeah.
So they realized oftentimes men who come to retirement age, who are used to going to work all the time, now stay too much at home. They've got nothing to do to make for themselves. They're just there. They don't know what to do. And depression sets in. They are seeing things which normally they wouldn't even pay attention to because they're barely home. But now there's so much concentration on minor things, and it drives them crazy. They're not used to that kind of pattern. So, and those that lost their partners also. So suddenly the woman that does a lot. Well, I give credit to women. Women are super multitaskers. They do a lot, and you don't really hear them talking like that so much at home. But they go somewhere else to complain. They go somewhere else for their heart burst. So in that sense, this Men's Shed is purposely made for men to come out and talk. They say men don't sit down and talk, but when they are standing next to each other, walking away, that's when they talk. So we have woodwork, we have metal work in the Men's Shed for men to just come and talk. That's the whole thing, because the things they're producing is actually not so much valuable. In some cases, they have competitions and all, but it's just to give men their own space, just to hear their opinion and all. So migrants are also welcome to this. But back to what we were saying there, the shift in the culture changes. It's a paradigm shift, because normally African men are the providers of the house. They provide for their household. Women are working culturally, yeah. Women are working also. They are making money. They have careers and all. But some things we know men will do them. You understand what I mean? In the households. And it makes men feel more in charge, because that's the way they've been brought up. That's the way our orientation has wired us. So when it comes to a place like this, where practically things are changed, and a woman who doesn't work tend to even earn a good amount and would not look up to the husband for a lot of things. And even those that work, they're still getting a lot of money. For instance, child support, it goes to the woman's account. And at the end of the day, the man is like, okay, I'm working, you're just sitting home, you're getting all this. But there are platforms now that are being created, because a lot, Mr. Habib, this is a very, very sensitive topic. And now we're getting men to talk. We need more platforms like this where men could share their opinions, they can tell about what they're going through. But it's not a new thing. It's not new. But now, I say for the past couple of years, men are beginning to talk. That's why we're seeing it now. But women have always been talking, because when a man overreacts at home and he comes out and put the outburst on his wife, express his anger in an inappropriate manner, it could be verbal, it could be physical abuse on a member of the family. Once that case is being pushed forward, no one tends to look back and say, what got that man from point A, where he was a loving father, a sweet husband, to this aggressive person he has become? No one tends to look at that. They look at what he has done, and he's being judged based on that. And that will easily drive a man crazy. Like, oh, so no one sees my effort now. Now, because of this one thing, it doesn't matter how nice I've been, how much sacrifices I've made, and all that. No one cares. And that will drive a man crazy. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah. We all have feelings, and for different people, we all, react differently based on what it is that we are feeling at that point in time. For the African man, you were right when you mentioned ego, a little while ago, because the ego is an intrinsic part of the makeup of an African man, especially with the role that, has been foisted on us generationally, which is the man is the head of the home, the man is the breadwinner, the man takes care of all the, of all the bills in the house, the man dictates pace of his family and that kind of stuff. A lot of the times they don't talk to the men, especially when they are kids, to let them know that there should be a balance between being a man and being a pop. Very few people understand that you cannot grow by yourself. You do need other people to grow. So if you want to build a home, you need that partner to help you build the home. Because, I mean, you have all sorts of adages as Africans. They say two heads are better than one. Well, you can't bring the Nigerian currency into the matter, because the Nigerian currency has two heads on it and the British currency has one, but the British currency
two good heads are better than one, Mr. Habib. Two good heads. Because if you have
heads.
two bad heads are not as good as one good head.
They're not as good as one, So we have a lot of adages and stuff that have shaped us and all whatnot as people. But going to the nitty-gritty, we rarely ever have those conversations that are necessary to have. I have been to men's shed, and when I went to the men's shed, it was just out of curiosity. And I was just like, let me even just go and see what happens there. Most of the people I saw in men's shed were over 60. Most of them were widows at that point in time. So it was a case of they just needed to go somewhere as opposed to going to the pubs to go and socialize. So that's why they were going to the men's. Now, for the African migrants in Europe, going to pubs is not necessarily something that they do, especially pubs where they can get to meet a diverse, group of people. They would usually go somewhere where they feel welcome, which is their own community hangouts and that kind of stuff. And when they are there, the kind of conversations that they have are with people from the same background who came with the same values. So when it comes to the issue of them going through any form of abuse at home, they never get to say that because of ego. They never get to say that my wife is bullying me. They never get to say that my wife is maltreating me. So I had a conversation with somebody not too long ago, maybe about 2 years ago. And the person told me of the challenges that he was having in his home with his partner. They had been married for about 5 years, 6 years before they moved to Europe. The wife moved first, and then he moved like 2 years later. When he got to Europe, the wife was a totally different person, quote unquote, from who she was back in Nigeria. It became a case of she was the boss in the house. I mean, for me, a woman runs the home. So, I mean, being the boss, that's a place when it comes to the home. But it went much deeper than that. There was a lot of physical abuse. There was a lot of mental abuse. And these were things that he could not share with other people simply because he's a Black African man who would believe that could possibly happen. How could he put his ego aside and tell people, I need help? These are issues that are never discussed. Why are they not discussed?
True. That's a very good point, Mr. Habib. Because let's come to where you started from there, that when people migrate over from Africa to Europe, that's a different ballgame. People need to understand some things can be transported and they will still arrive the same way. Some things cannot be copied and pasted without need of adjustment. Here, safeguarding is a massive issue. And within the four walls of a home, it's been less attended to. But when there are incidents, when there are issues in the house, then you bring them up. The issue of abuse, physical abuse, psychological abuse, neglect, and all sort of abuse, even verbal abuse.
Yeah.
Well, men, thank God we're beginning to come out and talk now. We're coming out of our shell to let people know that, like you said, men cry also.
Sure.
Because so many men, when they go through a lot of hard time within the house, they will just keep quiet. They wouldn't say anything. They just internalize things. They take everything in, not knowing that it's actually changing them. It's changing, it's affecting the way they think, the way they react, the way they process things and all. So in turns, is affecting them. A good example is if you look out there and in every town centers or probably Dublin, for instance, a massive one,
Yeah.
there are more homeless men than women.
Women.
And when you look at why are all these men homeless, some people will say it's alcohol. Well, these guys are used to drinking alcohol. Something must have pushed them to go over the limit. So people are used to the frustrations they have at home. Instead of them addressing it with their wives or seeking counselors or help or legal aid, they will go to the pub and drink it all. So when they drink it, when they drink a lot of alcohol, they believe it will suppress, which probably does suppresses it, but it's only for a time being. You can't be drunk forever. So if they suppress their emotions, their feelings, their anger for maybe a couple of hours, how about when they're sober? When the hangover is done, it
The
comes
problem,
back.
it doesn't change the situation. You know?
It doesn't. So the problem is still there staring at them in the face. So they still have to go back and drink some more. And the more they drink, the recklessly they behave, they skip work, they go to work late, they get verbally assaultive even to their job, to their employers, and they will lose their job. The wives will kick them out with a guard, and they'll be homeless. So when we see most of these things playing out, men go through a lot, but we have funny ways of expressing it. We have very weird ways of expressing. We wait till it gets so bad. I'm not saying men are right in all cases. No, I'm just saying when there are issues in the house as a family, which comprises of a man, the father, the mother, or whatsoever way their family is being built up, the partners should come and talk. They should identify the issues and not just presume the problem will vanish or take away or praying will take them away. Like Africans, we're very religious. We will not address some things that are staring us in the face. Instead of addressing them, we'll go to church, we'll go to mosque, we go to spiritualists to pray. Of course, God will do his godly part, but there are some part that we need to do. And we've turned our pastors to social workers. We've turned our imams to family consultants, to shrinks, because they are not just dealing with spiritual issues. Common sense issues are being taken there. And of course, these guys are men, they are humans too. So when I hear cases like this man of God or this person takes advantage of me, of course, they are humans, they are faults also. But if we as men and women could deal with our issues as soon as we identify them, as soon as these things surface, we should call our wives and say, here in Europe, men have a lot of security issues, to be candid, with our wives. Well, maybe back home, a man is used to the wife being at home all the time. Now the woman comes here, she's exposed to other men, making passes at her, appreciating her, giving compliments. The woman then, of course, naturally tends to be more bold, be more, have more confidence, appreciate herself more, and paying attention. It's just nature. People who appreciate you kind of gravitate towards them a way bit. And the man is just like, what's going on here? The woman is doing her nails all the time. The man is feeling a bit inferior or something. And some men wouldn't even come out to compliment their wives when the wives are making efforts and all. And at the end of the day, the slacks start coming in and different things. So no matter what the situation is, we need to start talking. I think talking, communicating, seeking help, talking out will start helping.
Okay. I'm going to ask you something, and
yes, sir.
It's going to lead to another question. But the first one is, could you give us a deep dive into a case that you have handled of domestic violence where the man was the victim? And that will now lead us to the second question, which will be how you dealt with it and how we can deal with these types of issues. But let's first start with a deep dive.
Yeah,
can you tell us of a situation where you've had to deal with domestic violence and the man was the victim?
Was the victim? Yes, sir. I will. There's this case. I was working with a family, and everything was working well. The father was happy, the mother was happy. We were making progress. And the man of the house called me and he said, there's this friend of his who's having this problem that the wife will physically assault him, slap him, seize his phone, seize his car keys, call his employer because the woman is not having her way. And the man cries. And even when he was telling him, the guy was shaking, making him promise and swear that he's not going to tell anybody.
Wow.
And the guy said he couldn't because he loved his friend. He has to share it to me because he's seen how far I've been able to support his family and he's now in a better place. He believes we can also support his wife. Support his friend rather. So I said, well, we can do that, but we need the man's permission. We can't do really. GDPR is very important. We cannot override his right. He has to permit us to work with him. And then we will know what way we want to come in. So at the end of the day, the man went to him, spoke with his friend, and they agreed that he will talk to me, he will speak to me, but I'm not going to speak any of this to any other person. I'm not going to get social workers involved. He doesn't want to lose his kids because the woman has threatened him that if she hears a word of what's happening in their house somewhere else from anyone, is going to be kicked out. She's going to cook up a story. She's going to injure herself and call the guards and tell the guards that the man done those things to her. So she had it all worked up and told him, if I hear a word of this, you're going. And this is this man who is in his late 50s. All his life savings, all his account, his joint account, they've got the house, everything he's ever worked for is in the family. So if he gets kicked out, is either going to kill himself or drink himself to death because he can't, it's too late to go start fresh. So I understood what's at play here. I knew the risk I was exposed to as at that time. So we need to be very careful. So when I spoke with him, I had a session with him over the phone. And at the middle of the conversation, he told me he cannot continue anymore because what I noticed was he wasn't talking at all. Then when his friend went to talk to him, he said his wife had cloned his phone. So every conversation, everything he says or does on the phone, the woman gets it also. Even if you text him, the woman gets it. So I was like, come on now. We have to do something radical. We have to get this man to talk. We have to get him out of the house. So it was a much longer process because we had to be careful. We didn't want him to lose his family. His mental health was affected grossly. And he didn't even want to leave his wife. So sometimes the victims are in so much fear that they oblige to whatsoever the perpetrator says. And they don't, because of the fear, they submit to them, be it a man or a woman, but in this case, it's a man. And at the end of the day, we had to pull the man out. There was nothing we could do because I was like, if this man continues this way, well, it might get to a point where he's being pushed to the wall. I've had a case where the man was somewhere, got a gun, shot all the kids, shot the wife, and shot himself because he has gotten to a point of no return. He couldn't take it anymore, and he couldn't see even the light at the end of the tunnel. So what we done was we had to bring this man out without the phone. So we told him to tell the family that he was going for a drive with his friend. And I sat with him and I said, this has gone past what you guys are thinking. This has to be attended to. We will provide you a shelter, but you have to come out. We have to call it what it is. So basically, we couldn't go one toe at a time, let alone one step. We couldn't even go slower. The risk was too high. So we just made the man sure that, you know what, we have to. There's no way. You're too deep into this. We have to pull you out. So at the end of the day, social workers were involved, the police were involved, and a solicitor was involved. Because for myself, it is my duty that if I see a safeguarding case, whosoever the victim is, maybe a child or a woman or a man, I have a duty of care to report it. And I know my colleagues, the social workers, they understand that this has to be done. They're not going to go talking about it to any other person because information is only shared to people who are only meant to know, like the police, like the psychologists and all. So we built a team of multidisciplinary professionals, and we had to go into to help the man. So the man was pulled out of a family, and the woman was questioned also because we only heard the side of the man. How they got to that extent, he never told about it. Then when the woman now finally get to give us our version of the story, we realized that this man got this woman into the country, and the man was controlling the woman everywhere. The woman claimed that this man would drive her to work, even to school, wait there till he finishes to avoid the woman talking to anybody. So the woman was getting depressed, and the woman got help. She sought help, and she got support from other women, not professional help, from other women, maybe from the church or some on informal way. So she got some help, and they were telling her what to do. And with that, she was able to create a balance. You know what they say, like women want gender equality. Some women don't want gender equality. They want a paradigm shift. Women, they believe men are like that. They are here. They want it like that. They don't want a balance. They want to be the one who called the shot. So, and I think that was what happened. So she went from being a victim to being the perpetrator. She didn't just got herself liberated and got her freedom. She got intoxicated with the power because when she faced the man with all the other support she got, she now had enough power to put the man in the position of disadvantage. So when at the end of the day, being aggressive. Now, because of what the man has done to her, it's now a case of a revenge. You done this to me, now you're gonna taste what you served. So at the end of the day, well, it's sad to say the family was dissolved, their marriage was dissolved. But I would rather have a case of two adults that are happy or happy to work together than having two adults that are not ready to work together, hating on each other, and will do anything to destroy each other. That I would recommend a separation or a divorce. So, and in that case, that was what happened. When everything was brought to open, they then had to decide what to do. No one told them to leave each other. They both decided that, you know what, it's not going to work. And
yeah, I mean that's a much safer solution because we have seen what has happened, severally. Reports coming out of the United States, for instance, where so many reports of men killing their wives, for one reason or the other, shots being fired, or different means, being resorted to achieve that horrible, horrible end. A life is precious, a life is sacred. So if you're not getting what you want out of a relationship, there should be nothing stopping you from walking away from that relationship peacefully, and just trying to find a balance between yourselves. If you have kids, if there's money involved and all of that. Now, that brings me to another sub question, which is, what role does money play in a lot of situations when it comes to these relationships?
Thank you so much for that that strategic question. Money itself doesn't play so much of a role. It's the management. It's the management of the money that is the problem.
Okay.
Because money is just there for exchanges to purchase things and all. But how is it being handled in the homes? How is it being regulated within the families? I'll cite a couple of examples from different parts of the world. My experience from living in Finland, I've seen different families doing well. Families that are doing like exceptionally well. The man and the woman do not run joint account. The woman has her own independent account, so does the man. And their bills are being splitted in half, where when the mortgage might be 700 or 1,000 quid every month. The woman pays 500, the man pays 500. The childcare is 500 per month, the man pays 250, the woman, because they both make their money. So none of them lacks. And these guys are not raised from African background. So they are not used to a man must pay all the bills. So these are Finnish people, and this work for them. That's them. But coming to us, we Africans, especially the Africans that were raised in Africa, we are used to, not all of us, a majority of us are used to, the man must take care of the bills, even if the woman works. The man will still buy the gifts if the woman works. So everything the man does is to provide. So the man is seen as a provider, even if the woman works. But here, it's a different thing. The woman works, there should be a money management plan in the house. One, for the projects. They want to build erect a structure at home. Whose name is it going to be? When they buy land, when they buy property, whose name? Because all these things needs to be factored in.
Yeah.
Whose money are they using to buy it? On what terms? Who foots the bills? If they go on holidays, who pays for all these things? In cases where the man does all these things before the woman starts working, when they move to Europe, or when the woman comes in, the man does everything, which is a very typical case. The woman doesn't work at the time, so the man takes care of all the bills. So now the shift is, when the woman starts working, how do they manage their finances? Because the man has not been able to save because he's busy taking care of all the bills, taking care of the rent and all. But now the woman makes money, and in some cases makes more than the man, and still some women will still expect the man to take care of all the bills, but some women will not. Definitely, they're very empathetic. They will say, "Come, I make money now. Come to the table and let's talk about the money." Yeah. So the role money plays in this is that the two people involved needs to manage it accordingly. If the woman makes more and the man makes less, there should be a mutual understanding that, okay, what approach are we going to follow? Are we still going to go on the man pays all the bills, even knowing that the man makes less? That will not be justifiable. And ego should be put aside. If my wife makes more money than me, well, I'll be glad, of course, that my wife's made more money than me. But it should be understandable that the way we run our families, our homes in Africa back then, those references we're always making to it has to change. This
Oh
is
yeah.
if you're living in Europe, you cannot be using the standard of Kenya, of Nigeria in Europe, and you're having a lot of problem. You have to be sensitive to understand that this is a new environment. The
Oh yeah.
needs are different. The way things work and the support out there is different also. So there should be a proper money management plan, a discussion that has to be held between the couple, the man and the woman in the house on how best to go. If they agree to go this way, and they realize after a couple of months it's not working. For instance, the woman has a lot of bills coming from home, and the mom will call, the dad will call, the cousins will call, and all the money goes there. And the man does not have a lot of family members that will be calling on him. And still, how do they justify the bill sharing? So they have to sit down and understand how to manage their funds. Okay,
Yeah.
the man makes 4,000, the woman makes 4,000, it's 8,000 pounds coming in every month. What's their bill? Their bill is maybe 3,000. 3,000 might go out of the 8,000, or 1,005 or 1,005, depends on who earns more or what they agree. Then at the end of the day, each person should still have some money left. If they have a project they're doing back home or here or mortgage, they should have an agreement as per what suits them. How much of this money that comes in go into that, and how much is left. So at the end of the day, there's still something left. And if they choose to run same account, which of course works for some people, there should be transparency. And if a pattern does not work well, they should consider other patterns, because, well, there's a saying that money is the root of evil.
I
And
don't
of course,
believe
I
it.
say, I say the management.
I don't believe that at all.
Yeah. It's an old saying, but I say
Yeah.
the management of money, or the mismanagement of money is the root of many evil, because money answers to many things. With money, you can do a lot of things. So it's a factor you cannot ignore. In every, of course, for people who are born into wealth, or who has flourishing careers, who are making loads of money, they might have less issues around money. But some people who are still building up, who are still
Yeah.
struggling a way bit, they have to pay close attention to money
Yeah.
management. They might have to go to a financial consultant to advise them on how to do things, and all. But coming back to men, are men open to these interventions? Are men open to discussions? This ego of I'm the man, I take care of things. They da 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 da.
That's a
They should
major
put,
problem.
if you have the money, of course.
That's a major problem. And for
Yeah.
me, I believe that statement of or should I call it an adage of money is the root of all evil. I believe it is one of the most manipulative statements of all time,
Hmm.
because most likely the person telling you that money is the root of all evil, the person probably has more money than yourself. So why is the
True.
person telling you that money is the root of all evil? You can't do anything without money. You need to be able to pay bills. You need to be able to give your family a good time. You need to be able to provide
Hmm.
for your family. All these things you need means of exchange, cash, money. So how would it be, the root of all evil? These are
Hmm.
some of the misinformation, that has been spreading culturally for generations, that have led to this huge disparity between the mental health challenges that Black men suffer when they're in Europe or when they're abroad, basically in the
Hmm.
European, the Western countries, as opposed to their other counterparts, either from those Western countries or from probably the Far East, Middle East, that kind of stuff. It's always a case of the Black man always seems to be at a disadvantage. Now, from the reports, that's one of the reports that I read. It says roughly about 40% of men who have had suicidal thoughts were actually men of Black African descent, which is almost half of the number of men. So that means that there's something fundamentally wrong in how, the issues of their inclusion, issues of integration are being handled. And then also coupled with the issue of the cultural background, where they come from, what are the norms, what are the things that are expected of them as men. So the challenges just keep piling up. Now, from your perspective, do you have like a 3-step plan, a 5-step plan? Because I remember correctly, at some point I read that you had set up a foundation in Nigeria to deal with these types of issues, and you had really big plans to go across to like probably maybe about what, every single state in Nigeria, right? So
yeah.
do you have like a 5-step intervention plan that you have developed yourself to deal with this type of issues that you can share with people, so you could just take a pen and a paper and you could just write out and just say, you know what, this is a plan that I could take before I actually get up and now say I need professional help?
Well, thank you so much, sir. Well, first about the foundation,
Hold on.
we
Can
have.
you hold on there? Can you hold on there, please?
Yeah.
Hold on, doing that. Can you see me?
Oh, your video is paused.
Yeah, it's frozen here. So I'm wondering what's going on. Technology for you, the internet.
yeah.
Well, we'll just have to get it edited, at the end. But I don't want the people to miss out on that part.
Okay.
So that's why I would want us to hold on to, because that would be one of the most. That's the key takeaway from this, which is people being able to say, you know what, this is a 5-step, plan that I could actually, implement, or steps that I can implement, and then if it's not working, then I can now reach out and get professional help.
Should we proceed?
No, it's still frozen. It's still buffering.
It's still frozen. Oh, okay. We hold on till we have it sorted.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, I know that I read somewhere that you had gone to Nigeria and you had set up a program in Nigeria for these types of interventions and how to help people where they come across these types of challenges, both for men and women, separate programs, and that your program was even going to go nationwide, but you were starting from Lagos. Now, for those who are here in the diaspora that need this type of interventions, do you have like a 3-step plan, a 5-step plan, something that could actually help them, to initially deal with these challenges? And then if that 3-step plan or that 5-step plan is not providing that initial intervention, then they can now resort to professional help. Do you have anything like that you could share?
Yeah, I have something like that. But when it comes, because
if you're watching this, get a pen and a paper, you better write this down now, so you make sure you get it, because this is free.
I just want to say this. This is not a recipe.
It's not a recipe. It's just it's just a case of you could try something to see if it work, and then if it's not working, then take
Yes, 100%. But before you start using that pen, like Mr. Habib said, we have a foundation in Nigeria. It actually is in Abeokuta, and it's called. It's in Abeokuta, and of course, it's in because we are from Abeokuta, and myself and my wife are chiefs from Owu, so that's the origin. So we registered it there. It's called Ashiwaju and Yeye Ashiwaju Community Development Foundation, and part of the activities we plan to do is, of course, to support families, because we know family is the bedrock of the community. Of anywhere you go, the family is if you're able to fix the family issues, in turns, the ripple effect will spread out to the community at
Yep.
large. So that's why we want to go back to the source, because we're like, you know what they say, like if there's fire everywhere and you want to get rid of the fire, target the source of the fire, where it's coming from. It's either you remove the heat or you remove the hair, and or you tag. If you have a fire extinguisher, you don't go to the flames, you go to the root, the source of the fire, because once you take it out, over time it will die off.
Oh yeah.
So that's why we're concentrating our community development approach to family support work. And to do this, we are collaborating with all actors in the private sector, in the public sector, in the civil society, everybody. Because, like we say in Africa, it takes a couple to have a child, but it takes the whole village to raise them. So everyone, every tool we can have, it's everybody's job to raise the family. So what we're doing there is we're collaborating with different community leaders and different political office holders and NGOs and INGOs, and most especially we're collaborating with Irish Family Resource Center National Forum. Because if
Okay.
you go somewhere and you see an approach or a pattern of of things that you like, that you think things might work, this is actually working. They have a pattern of approach there, which we thought what they're doing here will work in Nigeria. Of course, we have to adjust the concept a way bit, but if we implement a similar pattern, it will actually work, because humans are the same everywhere. They just have to be programmed right. So here, the Family Resource Center has been running for about 25 years. And the CEO of the National Forum is a friend of mine, Fred Galandi. And we've discussed this with the CEO of TUSLA, and we were looking at taking this to Nigeria. And we want to start as a tailored project in Ogun State, in Owu, to form a family resource center
Okay.
using this Irish model. And this same Irish model is being implemented in America, it's been implemented in Australia, and it's working well. So when we go out, we see something that works. There's nothing bad in approaching the owner of this idea and tell them, I like what you do. Well,
Yeah.
I would like the similar thing to be replicated back home. And with their permission, with their support, you can do that. So we're not stealing ideas here. We just see something nice with the permission, we have the copyright, so we edit it to ours. So that's
Right.
where the ideology comes from. So now that pen that you have, one thing we have come to understand to help our families is that both parties should work with understanding. It's not only law of attraction, it's not only love you need that makes a marriage. Of course, you will love each other, you appreciate each other, you'll be attracted to each other, but understand yourselves, understand your limits. If you want to draw a SWOT analysis, what's the strength of your partner? What's their weakness? What's their strength? So that you understand where to complement and to support each other. So understanding the time you're in, the environment you are, will be one thing that we all as individuals or as couples or as family or as community leaders, we need to have of our situation. And
Right.
if you have a good understanding, it's easy for you to identify when things are not going the way you want. So once you understand, you identify early. Because if you identify the problems early, when someone is beginning to change, they have this new habit which they're not used to before, then if you identify it early, you can easily get early intervention, because it's easy to nip it in the bud when it's still small. When it's still at its primary stage, it will be cheaper and it will be easier to terminate whatever problem it is if you identify it early. But if you leave it to blossom and become massive, then it will be more difficult and more expensive and time consuming as if you are able to do it. So,
Right.
number one is understanding. Number two is to identify. And number three is to communicate. The communication is like paramount. And what is communication? We have to understand The way I want to be communicated to might be different from the way my wife wants to be communicated to.
Right.
Verbal signs, verbal communication, non-verbal communication. If I go out with my partner, how do I look at her? How do I talk to her in public? How do I tell or talk to other people about my partner? How do I respect her? How, you know all these things. So
Yeah.
communication is not just talking, but the whole lot. So if you identify something, if you identify your partner has got this new habit, which is not good, you've understood it, you have identified it, how do you communicate it? So you communicate it in a good way. Like our mothers back home, then they are very good. They will wake up their partner in the middle of the night. They will not want to disturb the man in the day because he's busy with activities. They let him
Yeah.
come. They will feed him well. You see, they will make his favorite meal. They will let after all the family play and all. They will wake him up in the middle of the night. Some will even go on their knees to say, "I choose it. I'm sorry. I'm waking you up," and they will talk. You understand? They will
Yeah.
talk, and so communication is right both ways. Both ways, yeah. And if after all this, whatsoever thing you come up with to do or to identify and all, if it works, fine. If it doesn't work, you need to know when to seek help, when and how to seek help. So that
Right.
means you must know your surroundings. You need to know from whom you can seek help, from whom not to seek help, because some people will go and seek help from the wrong place that will only make the matter worse. So know how, when, and how to seek help. So I've said understanding, identifying the issue, communication, seeking help, and the fifth one, be ready to make changes. Be flexible. Don't say
Yeah.
my friend is riding a Jaguar, I must drive a Jaguar when you know you cannot afford it. When you know, don't push your husband to give you a car as a birthday gift when you know the man is struggling financially, when you know he's making investment, when it's not the right time. So both ways. Don't say because the woman I see outside has big like this, is big there, and you don't appreciate your beautiful wife at home anymore. And you start talking to her anyhow, start treating her in the wrong way. That's not
Yeah.
the way to do it. If you like a certain thing, talk to your wife. If it's something that is adjustable, you both should decide, do it. It's for your own pleasure. If it's the car your wife wants, you can't afford it now. If you both choose to take a loan and agree to do it, it's your choice, it's your life. But be ready to make the changes. So, Mr. Habib, these are the five suggestions we have.
All right. So that's fantastic because of course, yeah, I can watch this at any point in time, so I can always, take my notes, even if I don't take them now. But if you're
Mhm.
watching this, I would hope that you've taken those notes, and if you have not taken those notes, maybe you need to watch again and take those notes. It just might make the difference, to your life, to your mental health. Because if you don't have good health, you have nothing. In my own opinion,
Mhm.
that is. Because
True.
for you to be able to even make the money or spend the
Mhm.
money that you have to have good health to be able to do that.
Yeah.
So if you don't have good health, you're probably going to be dying away slowly. I
Mhm.
remember, like we
Mhm.
said earlier on, from the data that's available, nearly 40% of those who have been interviewed when it comes to mental health issues have considered suicide, and they are Black African men.
Mhm.
Yes, Abel Ayodeji has been able to explain quite a few things to us when it comes to the issue of mental health for men, what could lead men to become victims of domestic violence in the home, and a host of other issues. What I would implore anybody to do at any point in time is meditate. When you find
Mhm.
yourself in a difficult position, take a breather, take a couple of minutes, away, go for a walk or something. Stay away from the alcohol or whatever drugs. Don't do
Mhm.
drugs. Don't. Alcohol, maybe, maybe not. It's your choice, but don't abuse it. When you're upset,
Mhm.
don't take the alcohol. If you can
True.
avoid it, please avoid it. Personal lessons, I tell you, if you can avoid it. And this is not just a
Mhm.
case of whether it has to do with your domestic environment or whatever. Even at work, if you're upset, you're depressed, if you get bullied, you get harassed by anybody, don't resort to alcohol because you would lose control. It's either you have a total mental breakdown or you become extremely aggressive and you get to do things that you probably regret for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
All right. So try and avoid those things. Take a breath, take a walk, relax your mind. If you can, wake up every morning, go for a 10-15 minute walk first before you do any other thing, before you shower, say you want to go to work. And that might be difficult because of the weather sometimes and all that, but you can give it a shot. I mean, I used to enjoy going for walks first thing every morning. When I wake up, I go for, a 10-kilometer walk and all that. And it used to clear my head. Whether I had challenges or not, it was always a beautiful thing to do because clearing your head means fresh ideas. Even if you have challenges, you're able to clear those challenges and then you're able to think with a lot of clarity. These are things, simple things that we could all do. Now, full disclaimer, I'm not a mental health psychologist, neither am I, a family support specialist like Prince Ayodeji and all that. I'm just telling you what I do, when I have those challenges. And I do know that for you as a Black African man, don't let your ego be the overriding factor in whatever, decisions you decide to make in life.
Yeah.
A lot of people were reported in the news in the United States over the past 3 years, really violent crimes towards their families. Some of them even took their own lives. And we're seeing that the matter is escalating more and more because there are so many men that are much more depressed than we actually thought. That's why we decided to have this conversation with Prince Ayodeji, so that if we could pass out a little message, for a few people out there to hear, let them hear it. And if you're watching this and you think that you've gotten anything out of this, please do share. And we also know that over 90% of the people who watch this channel are not subscribers, and we would implore you, please subscribe to the channel, like the channel, and put on your notification bells so that anytime that we have some new stuff going on, you are always able to catch on. All our streaming channels are there on your screen. We have Instagram, Facebook, X now, no longer Twitter, and then of course the YouTube. So press that subscribe button, like this video, and let other people to benefit from this wealth of knowledge that Prince Ayodeji has come to share with us. We hope to see you all again sometime soon when we'll be discussing something similar again, hopefully, because as much as possible, we want to make sure that we all live healthy lives going forward. So make the money, live a good life, but protect your health. Thank you, Prince Abel Ayodeji.
Thank you so much for having me, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you.
See you again. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
Bye for now.